All right, so with me today, I got Brandon Oquendo. He's a developer, he's a builder, been a real estate investor and a realtor a broker for many, many, many years out here in the Salt Lake area. That's kind of like a high-level touch. Want to give me a little more detail about what you do?
Yeah, man. So entrepreneur, jack of all trades, master of none. Got in real estate in about 2005, 2006. Started dabbling in real estate, got my real estate license. Just started investing from that point. Moving forward, got my broker's license and have just been selling and doing investments ever since. So about 17 years.
You said entrepreneur. What other types of businesses have you been doing?
So I've been kind of an entrepreneur since I was young. I mean, I had side hustles since I was growing up. Really started dabbling in my own businesses. About 2007 was when I bought my first business. So I actually bought a franchise. So I bought a franchise. It's a residential commercial painting franchise. And we've grown it substantially within the top 10 companies in the state. So I have that, which is sort of segued now into a general construction business. So I have a GC firm. I also started a cannabis company. So I own a cannabis company as well. Algorithm might not like that, but I do own a cannabis company. And then obviously real estate. I got a lot of stuff in real estate. Buy, sell stuff for all my clients. I flip houses, build houses, develop, sort of all-encompassing real estate. So,
cool.
Yeah.
So this is my boy B, and it's funny that right now I have you on the very first podcast that we're doing. And the reason that is because you are pretty much the catalyst or the reason that I moved to Salt Lake and found the success that I've found in Salt Lake. And, a little backstory on that, Brandon and I, we went to high school together many, 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 many decades ago.
Lifetimes ago.
And so when COVID hit, I was like sitting there bored out of my mind, just depressed, sitting in Los Angeles, and you were out here in Salt Lake. And I remember I didn't know anyone that did real estate investment other than you. You're just by a couple of things I see you post on Facebook, like over the years, I'm like, okay, I think Brandon does real estate. I have a feeling he does. And so I remember that I messaged you about what does it look like to go knock on a door? Because I think I went to auction.com in my area and like I hit you up and I was like, hey, what do I do if I go knock on a door? Like, have you ever done that before? And it's funny that what you said to me is what I've said to many, many people now in the same situation that I was in, being such a newbie, was you're like, bro, if you've got the energy to do this, maybe Los Angeles like isn't the best spot for you. Maybe consider checking out Salt Lake and coming out here. And so I remember 2020, this was April. Katie and I came out to Salt Lake for a few days. You guys showed us around, took us into the mountains, took us around neighborhoods, kind of gave us the rundown.
I gave him the tour, the convincing tour.
Yeah, the convincing tour. And I then came home, I put in my 30-day notice for my landlord and I said, I'm peacing out. And it's funny that I've said this to other people, but one of the reasons that Salt Lake was so appealing was not only was the real estate here great, the outdoors great, everything that like appeals to me, but my previous career being in fine dining as a chef and a sommelier, I wanted to kill that career. I wanted to take it out back behind the bar and literally shoot it in the head. And Salt Lake, by having pretty much the worst fine dining scene in the nation with the worst wine scene, it was kind of an intentional choice of like, well, if I'm going to be giving up my career, this is the place to let it go. And so moved out here. We were here July 1st and the rest is history.
Yeah, I think if you remember, you had called me and we had talked about some locations that you were considering moving.
That's right.
Las Vegas was one of them. Boise was one of them. And I'm like, no, dude, Salt Lake's where it's at. Obviously, you have a lot of energy. I have a lot of energy. I knew that you could be successful out here. This was pre-pandemic, so properties were probably about 40 to 50% less than they are right now. So it was still a really affordable time to get into real estate. Obviously, that's changed substantially since. But so I think it was a perfect time. I mean, yeah, you came out and I think you didn't look back, truthfully. I remember you came back. You were out here within a matter of a couple of weeks, I think, or like a month.
I put in my, like I said, I put in my 30-day notice in April, and then I think it was like May and June, and then July 1st I was here.
Yeah, he was out. And so from that point forward, and then I got to give you a little props too, because I may have steered you in this direction, but you've really motivated me in the content stuff. So you were the first one that kind of started really putting out good content, and it motivated me to be like, yo, if my boy Jeremy can do this, I can do this. So,
well, you're more introverted than I am. That's obvious.
Yeah,
but like,
I'm definitely what I call an introverted extrovert. So I'm really good at being extroverted throughout the day, but there's a lot of times where I sort of reserve, hold myself back. You're much more extroverted.
You and I we're in our 40s. It's not the easiest thing to accept social media as being like, now this is my job.
Yeah.
But in real estate, and here's, for you dabble in so many different things. You got the cannabis company, you've got the painting company, you've got all that kind of stuff, and you've got your developments. You have found your stride in regards to like, you don't need social media. You really don't. Like you have found success without the need of social media. But for when you start doing more real estate investment and you are looking for more private capital and you are just looking for more more opportunities for that next bigger thing, social media is a currency, you know, and I think that that's something that you and I was fighting it for a while. You were fighting it for longer than I was, you know, but we really begin to see that social media is, when somebody is looking at another individual, social media is the credibility package. It really is. If you can document what you're doing, you know, it's funny, that very first round of reels that I created was at one of your projects. And it was me. And if you guys saw this reel, it was me basically saying, like, how do you turn a vacant piece of shit land into a multi-million-dollar build? And I remember I got so much hate and all this, like, I was using round numbers. I don't even think I even remember you saying what you actually bought the land for. Yeah. I was just giving like a really round number, be like, hey, you could do this and put this much into it, and boom, now you've got a condo complex or a townhome complex by, again, utilizing that or utilizing this space. Like this space for me, this is in my basement of the house that I took over subject to, you know, utilizing every square foot that you can use in what you currently do. If you're doing a flip, you film that flip. If you're doing a build or, you know, your infill, whatever you're doing, you document that, and then therefore, like, your resume is your Instagram.
Well, and I think speaking to that is exactly right. There's so much stuff that I've been doing through the years and not documenting. I feel like I've missed out on a lot of opportunity to really put out what I've done up to now. And even going back to what you just described, I think you're right. Our generation has a really hard time putting ourselves out there, especially when it comes to social media. So that's really been something that's hard for me to navigate, to learn, to just get myself out there, put myself out there. And it really is the credibility factor. You know, people now, obviously, marketing has changed. And so one of the ways you can market and build your brand is to just put yourself out there, show people what you're doing. That in and of itself builds credibility, because people say this guy's real, you know, he's really doing something. And even in this space we're in, if you remember, you were going to, I think you were going to Airbnb this space, was your plan. You were going to take this space and Airbnb it. And I was like, no, dude, don't Airbnb it. I didn't tell you to turn this into the studio. That wasn't necessarily what I told you to do, but I thought that it was, you had better use of space for this.
And so it's funny that when I moved into this house, 6-bed, 4-bath, I was overwhelmed and I was scared,
to say the least.
Yeah, I had come from an apartment in Los Angeles, then I moved to Salt Lake in an apartment, and it was, you know, me again going all in real estate that gave me this opportunity. And for me, we didn't have kids. You know, we now have our first son, but like for Katie and I to move into a 6-bedroom house.
It was a huge house.
Huge house.
Yeah, and you were trying to figure out, what do I do with all this space?
Right. So like this window right behind me, my goal was to, you know, basically bash this out, put a walkout entrance and have this be a door for like a mother-in-law suite. And, you know, back there behind the camera, there's already a sink and there's already a dishwasher, but like installing the laundry and the dryer and all that stuff, and installing whether it be a gas line or electric for a stove and a hood and a vent. Because you've done a lot of building, you're like, the fuck no, bro. Like, what are you thinking about doing right now? Like the concrete alone is going to be about $30,000, and you're going to have to be jacking this up and doing all the drainage and stuff like that. And so I didn't listen to you right away. I still did my research. I got an engineer out here, and like what you said, because you had been doing building for so long, what you said was confirmed. So I go, okay, well, not going to be Airbnb-ing this, then what?
Well, I think you were even going to live in the downstairs space and Airbnb the upstairs, and I'm like, that is a nightmare.
Yep.
Tenants above you all the time, people coming and going, like, I think you're going to hate that. And maybe Katie was pregnant at that time.
She was.
Yeah, so I was like, with the baby coming, I don't know, man, you got a great house, you have a great space. You were talking about originally turning the garage into your kind of like studio, you know, and I'm like, that gets hot. You know, there's a lot of like elements out there, but this is the perfect space, dude. You turned this into a rad spot.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, it was, it was a lot of fear coming from my side of going like, okay, maybe I live up top on the 2 stories and then I rent out the basement. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I can get more money if I rent out the top and I live in the basement. I'm like,
he was in full house hack mode at that point.
I was trying as much as I could to leverage as much of the space as possible. Yeah. And it wasn't until I saw this basement and I go, I'm turning this into a studio.
Yeah.
Like, I know that right now this studio, or, you know, when I first built it, it's not monetizing. It's not bringing me any money. It's not paying me rent. Yeah. I know that, but I also know that by leveraging this space and creating content, showing what I'm doing, sharing the wins and all the deals that I'm doing, will eventually bring me one deal. Yeah. And if that one deal is worth $20, $50, $100,000, that's going to make up, if I ever rented this out or Airbnb'd it, it's going to make it up tenfold.
Sure.
So,
and start propelling you forward with the content that you're putting out now.
Right, exactly. So, good intro.
Yeah, I feel privileged, to be honest. Well, we talked about this for a while. He kept saying, I want you to be the first guy on, but then I saw he had sort of cheated on me a little bit with a few other people, but that wasn't necessarily for the
That wasn't a podcast. That was just like little snippets and stuff like that. No, so Mike, a good friend of mine, he's up in Boise.
Yeah.
And so he came out here for one of my meetups thinking that Pace Morby was going to be here.
Yeah.
And so he drives all the way 5 hours from Boise to Salt Lake, and he gets to the meetup and he goes, "Where's Pace?" And I go, "Pace was never going to be here, dude. Like, no, this is the Utah Salt Lake meetup." Like, so I see his like heart gets crushed. And I was like, "All right, man, so you don't have to drive back another 5 hours. Like, do you want to just hang out and chill? Like, I got some filming I got to do. Like, I've got my videographer with me. I'm like, why don't you just come to my place and we'll just do some footage together?" So we did exactly that. We just talked about, social media. We talked about whatever it was, but he's not on my podcast. Don't worry. You're still the first, baby.
I'll take it. I appreciate it. I do feel privileged. So thank you. And I appreciate you giving me the props on kind of, getting you out here, get you started. I can go into a little background on me. I know we talked about sort of what I did, but obviously both of us went to high school together in Southern California. I had moved here in 2002 to go to college. And then I saw the opportunity. I mean, at that point in time, California was becoming exorbitant. The prices were becoming exorbitant. And Utah just represented a lot of opportunity. And truthfully, through the last even 17, 18 years until really about 2021 is when it sort of started to really catch up with some of these other states. So I feel like I was in a prime position to start investing. I bought my first house in Salt Lake for $125,000, which is,
Which city?
South Salt Lake.
Okay.
So
Beautiful.
I call it Sugar Hood.
Yep.
So it's right outside Sugar House, but I was able to buy my first house at a young age. I was 25 years old. I bought my first house. And really that house sort of catapulted me. I wasn't even selling real estate at that time, but I do remember when I bought my first house, being so green and naive, I felt like there was a lot of things that I was unfamiliar with in that process. And so that's kind of what started me down the real estate path. The other piece of that was, funny backstory that nobody really knows, I wanted to sell a medical device. So I had studied medicine for quite a few years.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. So I studied medicine for quite a few years, but I'd always been in sales. So I really wanted to sell medical device. Nobody was going to hire me at 23, 24 without outside sales experience. I had had a ton of sales experience, but not a ton of outside sales experience. So the traditional path for selling medical device is to start selling printers and start kind of selling the print game through Canon or whatever the case may be. And that was like the antithesis of who I am. I didn't want to do that. So I thought, you know what? If I can sell real estate and demonstrate that I can sell real estate, I think real estate is probably one of the hardest things you can sell. And so got my real estate license, and I just was naturally pretty good at it. I'd always had a passion for real estate. I've always liked, flipping and that sort of thing.
What year did you get your license?
2006.
Okay.
So the beginning,
before
2006.
Before the end.
Yeah, right.
Occur, yeah.
So that was the next one. So I got my real estate license in 2006. At that point in time, anybody could sell a house. It was pretty much the easiest thing on the planet. And then the market crashed. And so that was a very hard lesson learned. I had already left corporate America. I had left a really stable and well-paying position. April 1st, 2007 was actually the day that I left corporate America and started down this path. And then 2008 hit, and that was the Great Recession. So not the greatest time to get into real estate, but truthfully built a lot of character in sort of what I've been doing and moving forward from that.
So what shifted in 2008? I mean, obviously you're probably not selling houses anymore, right?
Yeah. So I was still a serial entrepreneur at that point. So I had my painting company, and then I was been doing real estate before that. But I knew with the way things were going that I had to make sort of a choice. And that choice was, I have this painting business that's an asset. It's something that I could physically and tangibly feel. Hopefully down the road I could sell it. And I have this real estate business. This real estate business is sort of autonomous. I didn't really see at that point in time, because I was young, the value of a real estate company. And so I thought, if I got to dedicate a little bit more time to something, I'm going to dedicate a little bit more time to this investment, which was my painting company. And so I kind of didn't put real estate on the back burner, but wasn't necessarily hitting it 100%. I was really trying to keep this painting company going, and was able to really move forward from there, and kept doing real estate on the side. And then real estate sort of took over, and the painting company now runs itself. I have about 40 employees that run that company with me and for me. So that's sort of a self-sustaining business, but that was the path. And then, navigating through the Great Recession was really challenging, something that built a lot of character, like I said, and really turned me into kind of the hungry agent and broker that I am today.
I want to talk about the painting company real quick.
Yeah.
So I remember you told me before that when you first bought the franchise, there were no SOPs. There were no, almost handed you a shittily built company that you now have to figure out how to work. And now that, the company's been around for a long time. Do you know how many franchisees there are?
I think now there's 200 plus franchisees.
Okay.
And when I had come on, I was number 5. So I was one of the first, I was definitely within the first 10 franchisees.
So tell me what the business looked like now as compared to when you first bought it. The reason I ask this question is that most entrepreneurs, when they build a business, they can be the hustler. They can be the solopreneur that's doing what they need to do every single day to make the money come in. But then there's going to come an eventual point for when you are going to start hiring. If you don't have the SOPs and you don't have the structure built behind that, you're not going to be able to hire correctly. You're not going to be able to even be a good leader, right? And so you're going to kind of fail that point, and you're going to be firing people, letting people go. What was that like for you in regards to when you buy this franchise and it's got very little meat on the bone in terms of tangible ability for you to scale. What was that like for you in those beginning years?
So that was what you just described is exactly accurate. I kind of bought a business that had a proof of concept, but really hadn't been scaled. So there was a guy in that business that he had seen, he was doing maybe 400,000 a year in revenue, which at that time was astronomical.
Yeah.
Nobody was touching that much revenue in a painting company, at least in a painting franchise. And so seeing that, I was like, this is possible. The downfall was he had invested pretty much everything he had into new construction. The Great Recession hit, new construction basically fell off, and so his business went out down the drain.
Right.
And so I saw that too and said, okay, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. If I'm going to do this, I want to have, residential repaints, commercial, new construction, sort of really a diverse bag of customers just in case something like that were to happen again. And this company did not exist here. So I had to sort of kind of like I was buying a franchise, but I was also buying a startup, which I liked because I'm not really good with the corporate stuff. So I appreciated that. So I was able to get out there, guerrilla market this company, putting up yard signs on corners, talking to anybody I knew, just trying to build this company. And now it's a very recognizable brand and name. We have about 200 franchises around the country. And the people that buy now have a very good understanding of what they can do. I mean, we do several million in revenue. Some of my counterparts in other states do even more than I do, several million plus. So to be able to, it's like social media. When you can look to somebody and see what they're capable of doing, see what they're doing, see what they're cranking out, it motivates you. Whereas when I started, my motivation was just my hunger to do more. I didn't really see what capability was. I wasn't totally sure how much revenue I can pull with the painting company. And a funny story, everybody thought I was fucking crazy. Everybody's like, you're buying a painting company, dude? Like, what do you know about painting, right? And I'm like, I don't know dick about painting. You don't want me to paint your house. I still tell people that when I talk to them. You don't want me to paint your house. But I knew...
By the way, what do you think of the painting?
You did a great job. Actually, if you're looking for a job, let me know. But I knew that business, it's these processes and creating these systems. Really, I think anything in business is interchangeable. It's just the widget that you're sort of changing out. So I knew that if I could teach myself to successfully run this painting company, I could just replace the widget with a different idea, same concept, same way to scale a business and grow from there. And so that's really what happened. And that's kind of what I was able to do. From that point, I hired my first person probably way too late. I'm a control freak. So I was doing a lot of stuff on my own, probably far too much. I think by the time I'd even hired my first real employee, we were probably doing probably around $1 million, a little over $1 million. So to do $1 million in revenue as a painting company is a substantial amount of work. I mean, your average job size is maybe $3,000.
Right, that's amazing.
So you're doing a ton of work, without having a scalable business. And so hiring on my first person was probably the most challenging thing that I did. But looking back, I should have done it sooner.
So yesterday I had Pace Morby sitting right where I'm at right here. And we were talking about delegation. And he was saying, great point. He was saying that 91% of all businesses never reach $1 million in revenue. 91%. Yeah. Now, I think to myself, I think that's an easy number to comprehend. I mean, think about how many Etsy businesses there are and all that kind of, let me start an LLC and start crocheting sweaters for my cat, right? So that's never going to, hit $1 million. But the ones that do hit $1 million in revenue, once they've hit the first million is the hardest. So when it comes to delegation, it's really funny to look at that that is where in my journey right now on my path, that is what I'm focused on. That I've got my team, I've got people that I've hired, but what I haven't learned to do is let go of control. That I'm still going to properties and helping the tenants spraying for ants, stuff like that. Things that an assistant should do, things that I should absolutely never frickin' do, because my job is to do more money-making activities, to bring in different opportunities. It's my job as the visionary, and you're a visionary 100%. You are not an integrator. Do you like playing around with spreadsheets?
I mean, I like spreadsheets a little, but
okay, but yeah,
it's because I'm a numbers guy, so I like the numbers.
You are a visionary just like I am, in the sense of you can see an opportunity to build a business. You can say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna get a painting business. Yeah. An integrator is never going to go, you know what I want to do? Buy a painting business. Yeah. And so as the visionary, it's our job to build a new bucket, and it's the integrator's job to fill that bucket with more money, right? And so we were talking about delegating, and for you, you're 15 years ahead of where I'm at currently in regards to, you've got the Utah Cannabis, you've got the painting company, you've got all that kind of stuff. For you, you're still holding on to a lot of responsibilities.
Probably too much.
Pace was saying, he doesn't step into his office anymore at all. His goal is to not be in his office. And so, it's funny that knowing the drive and the hunger that you have for your business, I think for you, it's a fear of, will your business falter if you were to step away?
Well, I think that's the case anytime you run a business. You're never going to find somebody that's going to run your business the same as you do, right? It's impossible to find find somebody with the same passion you have for your business, because they would just be out running their own business. So that took me a while to understand that not everybody's going to meet my expectation. I'm a perfectionist. I get that. So finding the right people to put in those positions that are going to at least get to the point where you're comfortable letting go of some things. And I've done that before, actually. I'll take a vacation for a couple weeks and I'll try to completely remove myself from the business. And the painting company is very self-sustaining. I mean, obviously through the years I've built some systems there, and those guys are amazing. My staff that runs the painting company is incredible. I couldn't do it without them. But it took me a long time to get to that point where I was comfortable hiring somebody to let go of some of those responsibilities. And even still, that delegation is hard for me because I'm a control freak. So letting go of everything is really challenging. The painting company, I've been far more successful in doing that because I've been running it for so long. So it really does self-sustain itself, which is nice.
So would you say, let me ask you this, would you say your painting company is the most matured of all the businesses?
I've been in real estate longer, but I would say because real estate's much more of a solo entrepreneur endeavor, I can handle things remotely and still make money while I'm gone, but the painting company actually makes money while I'm asleep. So I don't have to be answering the phone for that. I don't have to be delegating or talking to everybody to get things done. I don't know most of our customers anymore, truthfully.
Right.
So, and I don't even know most of our employees anymore, to be honest. Like a lot of the people that work for us, I don't know. I used to know everybody. I used to be very involved. So just being able to remove yourself like that. But I had not a mentor, but a business partner, if you will, who was a counterpart, owned another painting company, same franchise in Dallas. And he would tell me that. He's like, if you can't step away from your business and it's still run without you, you don't have viable business, you know? And so that was what I really spent years doing, was trying to figure out how I can remove myself and have the company still, produce the revenue that it needs to. So yeah, I would say it's probably the most mature. 2007, we're going on 13, 16 years, so almost 17 years. So yeah, I think Pace is right. I've heard it's even more. I think 95% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. Franchises are a little bit less. I think it's like closer to 80, 70, 80% of franchises fail. And so that was the benefit of a franchise, was even though at that point in time, there was no real business that I was buying a proof of concept. The nice part is you're buying a proof of concept. So you're not actually out sort of recreating the wheel. They're giving you these things that have already been proven to work, and you just need to learn how to implement it in your own market. Right. The downfall to a franchise is a lot of times you're buying a job. And so until you can figure out how to work yourself out of that job, all you did was buy yourself a 9-to-5. And you're not really, in my opinion, you're an entrepreneur because you're working for yourself, but you're really just self-employed. You know what I mean? And until you can pull yourself out of that and not have a job, that's the goal, is working yourself out so you're not grinding every day just doing the menial stuff. Like you said, cleaning up ants, kind of the bullshit stuff that you don't really, they're menial tasks. But to that point, I think it's important for people to know that nothing in my business that I would ask somebody to do that I have not done or I could not do. Right. And so I don't mind doing the grunt work because I want my employees to see, dude, this guy will get in there and fucking bust it out too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not scared to get dirty. So having employees see that you're in there with them, you're willing to, you're capable of doing that, it doesn't breed like this fear of he doesn't need me, but it also lets him know he's capable of doing this without me. I just make it easier for him, And so I think if you can, once employees start to know that you really need them, I don't want to say they take advantage of you, but they sort of take advantage of you. They know that without me, he can't run this company, Right.
In this business and wholesaling, it's kind of the same thing of once one of our employees, once they get their first deal, they feel like they're, God mode now. Mm-hmm. They feel like either they deserve more because they've now had proof of concept, or they go, you know what, I can do this and do it better. And so they'll take your systems, whatever you've got running, and they'll go off and they'll do their own thing. And so for me, that's one reason that virtual assistants are such an amazing asset to have in the business that I do, because they're very black and white. They follow instructions very closely. They hit their KPIs, but Americans will do it, if you're lucky, at 85% of what you can do. Mm-hmm. So you're already going to be depleting your performance. And then the question is what's the longevity of them being with you?
Yeah. Well, even dealing with wholesalers for so many years, I've seen that exact thing happen where they get somebody in, they train them. Now this wholesaler is sending me deals separate from the company they were working for, because it's a very easy business to replicate. If you're hungry enough and you can get out and knock doors, you can find leads. Right. You know what I mean? So that is a very replicatable business, and that is the challenge when you have replicatable businesses, because people think that they're capable of running those businesses. Mm-hmm. What I've learned throughout the years is just because you're good at doing something doesn't mean you're good at running that business, Right. So for example, I can give you painters, let's say. All the time we have painters that are out, I'm going to go start my own business. I can do this. I see how much money you guys are making. But what they don't see is all the money you're putting into advertising, all the bullshit that you're dealing with day to day, all the regulatory stuff you're dealing with, the licenses, the insurance, all those sort of things. So on the outside, it's like, I don't need these guys. I can just go do this on my own. But the cold reality is very grim once they get out there and say, now I got to dump a bunch of money in advertising to get the phone to ring, just like you do for wholesaling. And then what's a little bit different in construction, wholesalers, they sort of assign the contract. So there's no real, I don't want to say there's always skin in the game, but there's no real output of skin in the game. Mm-hmm. With the painting, meaning you're buying the material, you're putting out the labor, and then a customer may or may not decide to pay you. You know what I mean? Or you may be on a 30, 60, 90-day net receipt. And so how do you, as a business owner, hold out and not collect that money? That's one of the biggest challenges I see for people that want to go out and start their own thing is they can't maintain the revenue and they don't manage their money well enough that they can hold back and wait for that to come in. So that's what I like about that. The wholesaling is really hard though, and I've seen it happen a ton. These guys go out and start their own thing. A lot of them fail, but there's been a few that have succeeded, and they sort of created their own wholesale business. The VA thing is great because they're not local. So they're not going to be here trying to steal your company and your leads and your business, And so I think having the VAs is really beneficial thing for the wholesale business.
Multi-business owners, all right. As a multi-business owner, as same for myself, if you were going to be speaking to somebody else that owns one business right now, and now they're about to start a secondary business, maybe it's going to be a vertical column, something that's going to benefit or complement the previous business, or it might be something completely different. Because I mean, here's the thing, like for you owning a cannabis company and a painting company,
very different.
Other than, sniffing the paint, there's really not much comparison there. So for you, real estate and painting go hand in hand.
Yeah, they're pretty symbiotic.
Cannabis, not at all. That's more of a passion project, I can tell.
Yeah.
If you had one business and you were going to be going, hey, you know what? I'm going to start a secondary business. What would you look for? Would it be more of a passion play for you? Or if you were to do this again, or you were to add another thing to your plate, let's ask that question. If you added another thing to your plate that you want to start another business from the ground up, what do you think you would do?
Oh, that's tough, man. I think we were to look at the trajectory of where things are going. I think trades are a really good business to get involved in. And I saw that a long time ago, actually. When I started my painting company, I realized that it was a super unsophisticated business. You had what we would call chucking the trucks. Those dudes were out kind of, wearing their painted whites, looking like shit, showing up to customers' houses, putting their estimates on, napkins, let's say, just not super professional, right? So adding that bit of professionalism and technology really to a super unsophisticated business propelled us beyond most every painting company out there. Now, a lot of technology has caught up. You can take some stuff off, we call them off-the-shelf businesses. So you can pull some software off the shelf that essentially gives you a level playing field with most every company. So that being said, I think that it's really important to do something that is, at least initially, relatively symbiotic with what you're doing. Painting and real estate went hand in hand. I knew that I could either get potential real estate leads or clients from painting, and I knew that I could provide value to my real estate clients with the painting company. The challenge with that is sometimes when you intermix businesses like that, let's say they have not the best experience with the painting company, for example. Well, now you've potentially burned your bridge for your real estate business. So you really want to make sure that whatever you're doing it well, because you don't want to kill your client that you potentially could have had for your other business that may have been more valuable, right? A real estate client, in my opinion, is probably more valuable than a painting client because the painting client doesn't come around as often and their cost per job is a lot less. Whereas real estate, you have a much higher revenue dollar, and they're traditionally turning over every 5 to 7 years, let's say, is a kind of repeat business for your real estate. So back to your original question, I think it's really important to probably try and focus on things that are symbiotic with your business. And back to my previous point, I think trades are very underserviced at the moment. So we probably talked about this a little bit further, but when we were growing up, college was the most important thing that you could do. Go to college, get your degree. I went to college, I got my degree. Fortunately, I got my degree in business, so it has benefited me. But truthfully, I didn't learn a lot getting my degree. I just learned how to get something done. What I learned most about business was owning a business and kind of, moving in that direction. But the trades were always looked at as like kind of dirty, not as lucrative. But I see these plumbers out here charging $100, $200, $300 an hour. They make more than attorneys in some cases. And I tell them that. I'm like, dude, you're charging me as much as a doctor would charge me. And they're like, yeah, find another one, So the doctors, if you will, are a dime a dozen. You can go to a million doctors, but you want to find a plumber, they're backed up for a couple weeks, couple months. Find somebody that's a skilled electrician, hard to do. So I think the trades going forward, if I could recommend to anybody to get involved in a business, it would be a trade-related business because you're sophisticated, you're smart, and you know technology, you're miles ahead of the competition. And so now you just have to be able to create a good product. And obviously that is what, I'm not a painter, right? Like we talked about, I'm not a painter, but I have great painters that work for me. And I've been able to keep a lot of those painters for 10 plus years. So that loyalty factor is really important too. So, if you don't want to get into trades, that's fine too, but find something that's relatively symbiotic with the business that you're doing that you may be able to complement the other with that secondary business. And so that's what I did. And then obviously the cannabis company was more of a passion project. I've been really passionate.
So let me ask you this. And again, I want to get my timelines correct.
Yeah.
You got your real estate license in 2006. When did you buy the painting company?
February of 2007.
Okay. So right after that, and then the market drops, everything falls out. Did you buy the painting company because you were bored of being an agent? Was it not challenging enough in 2007? Like, I guess my question is, you've only been an agent for 1 year. What makes you go, you know what I'm gonna do now? Own a painting company. What was that drive?
So my mind, I wanted to speak to this a little bit because advice. I've even seen you say it a little bit in some of your content to really focus your attention on this one thing.
Zero in on one thing, yeah.
For me, that's impossible. So to just focus in on one thing, my mind is just not wired like that. So I've always needed sort of multiple irons in the fire. I've also always been a big believer in multiple streams of income. So I've always known, listen, and again, witnessing the recession, I saw this happen firsthand, but putting all your eggs in one basket could be a detriment to you. So I knew sort of diversifying a lot was what I wanted to do. I was a pretty new agent, but I was also an entrepreneur. And so I knew that I wanted to kind of do several things. And the painting company was just a way for me to demonstrate that. Truthfully, I was going to start a cell phone company because I was in telecommunications sales. That's what I left corporate America April 1st of 2007. I was working for Verizon, making a bunch of money as a 25-year-old kid in sales. I was slaying it. And so when that day came, I knew that it was about that time that I had to leave corporate America, or I was never going to truly like allow myself to succeed. So that's what I decided to do. And you know, it was a challenge at first because I didn't know anything about either, and kind of molding those together was really the most challenging thing, at least initially. But yeah, they didn't have anything to do with each other. I will say that when I was looking for a business to invest in, I did not want to invest in a business that was going to require me to be somewhere all day. So I was looking at several franchises at that time. I was looking at fast food, not necessarily fast food, but restaurant style franchises. And so I knew that I didn't want something that I was going to have to be stuck in one location. And I had sort of settled on a wireless company. I was going to invest in a wireless company, start my own. I think at that time it was probably Boost Mobile. I was going to start my own wireless franchise. And then one day I met this entrepreneur who had this weird concept of a painting company. And I really liked the idea of that because I wasn't tied to something. It was totally virtual.
Yeah.
Everything that I was doing was remote. I could answer my phone. I could work from home. I didn't have to go to a store. I didn't have to be somewhere. If an employee called in sick, I didn't have to show up for them. So I was really looking for something that allowed me more flexibility that way. Now I learned the hard way that it was still very involved. And even when your employees at that point in time didn't show up, I would have to fucking grab a paintbrush. And I would literally be on my hands and knees in these customers' houses, painting shit, thinking, I didn't fucking sign up for this business to be a painter, dude. This is not what I want to do. This is not my passion. But at the same time, growing a business has challenges, right? And so when your people don't show up and you have a customer over here who's raging, you better figure out a solution.
Right.
And if that's me being there pretending like I'm getting some shit done, that's what you got to do. And so that was a hard lesson learned too, that nothing is free of challenges, right? Like you're always going to be challenged no matter what you're doing. And it's learning those systems that you need to put in place to make it less challenging.
So I want to move into your development, spec homes, all that things you've been putting together. But I want to ask one more question from you, because there's probably going to be a lot of real estate agents that are going to be listening to this podcast. If you're a new agent, you just got your license and you're enjoying it, it's something good, but you know that you've got that shiny object, right? You've got to do something else. You can't just sit there and just go to open houses and put out cookies every day. In your opinion, what do you think the next bolt-on business should be for the average real estate agent?
I've thought about this actually, because what would be sort of in line with the real estate? I think a good one could be property management. So I think a lot of real estate agents could be great property managers. And so starting a side hustle property management business will allow you to pick up clients both ways. So you can pick up rentals that you're managing for your clients. And then when those clients are ready to sell or they want to buy another investment property, you're the first person that comes to mind. So I think property management could be a really good business in terms of real estate people that are looking for a side hustle or another business that they can add on. Now, I don't know how it is everywhere. Here, there's some rules around being a property manager and a real estate agent. You know what I mean? You kind of have to navigate that. Every state's different, but it's capable of doing it. And I think it's a great add-on business for people, especially that may be trying to, like me, you know, I don't want to say squirrel, but at the same time, like they have a lot of weird stuff going on in their head all the time.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So for me, and I'll touch on this, from the wholesale side of things, like everyone always, you know, when I say the term wholesale in real estate, everyone always understands it as getting a property under contract and then selling that contract for a wholesale fee. But realistically, it's not, I'm not a wholesaler, I'm a sales and marketer, right? So it's my job to be marketing to sellers, be marketing to agents, whatever it may be. It's my job to be able to identify deals being brought to me, because I can't just sit there and hope that a seller comes to me and just knocks on my front door and says, hey, will you buy my house at a discount, right? So with the business that I've run with sales and marketing, it could be anything. I can replace houses with cars. I can replace it with, you know, literal printer paper. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm trying to go directly to the source and find the product at a discounted rate, and then I'm trying to sell that product at a higher percentage. Now, when it comes to bolt-on services that work really, really well, first and foremost, the reason that I built Prime Virtuals was a VA, a virtual assistant, is almost vital in the marketing and sales aspect of this business, because you have to do a lot of cold calls. You have to do a lot of SMS and text message blasts and stuff like that. And so for me, one of the first hire, actually, no, not one of, the first hire that I made was a virtual assistant from the Philippines. And I remember that virtual assistant, I think they got referred to me by another investor that I barely even knew. And they said that they use this company, and then this company basically provides you a fully trained VA, and they manage your systems and all that kind of stuff. It's a turnkey product. And so I remember I hired one VA through that company, and I ended up training that VA myself, and that VA became that company's highest performer. Then I got another VA from that same company, and then I trained that second VA, and then that second VA, the two of them were the highest top performers within that company. And so when they told me this, the company asked me like, how are you doing this? I came to think, I go, if I'm doing this just on my pastime and I'm helping VAs become really good at sales, maybe this is something that I should focus on. And instead of training a VA that works for another company, I should create a company and train the VAs. And so one of the first things that I did, and it's funny that it was a shiny object at the time. I look back at it now and I almost want to say that I almost regret the choice of doing that it was really great to bring in passive income early on, because not only am I saving by it being almost wholesale price, right? I'm not paying the higher percentage of whatever that hourly is going to be. I'm saving money for my company, but I'm also able to help other investors getting deals with their VAs through my company. Now, again, in the beginning, making that passive cash flow, as you said yourself, you can be asleep and money is being made. It's a really nice thing to have, and it's a great bolt-on service. But eventually, the one thing that I was doing that I regret now is that I was the funnel for bringing in new clients. It was me having the conversation with other investors and going like, hey, let me show you how to use a VA. Let me teach you how to do this. And it almost became that I was a one coach. And that is not the ideal goal that I had. And so what that shiny object did was it took me away from my real estate business, and it kept me, ping-ponging back and forth. This business needed my attention, then this business needed my attention. It was a never-ending cycle. Now, the VA business is somewhat stabilized. I'm not really spending any of my days in it at all. Maybe I'll help out a client that needs help or something to that effect. But, the VA business, going back to the whole point, the VA business was an ideal bolt-on service that helped lift up my wholesale company by doing the same thing at the same time. And so when I look at like what my projection is for the next businesses to build, or maybe not even build the business, but bolt on to somebody else's business, would be hard money, right? Would be insurance. Like every deal that I do, if I'm going to be, let's say, assigning a deal to an end buyer or to a fix and flipper, what's the ideal goal? I would say to that flipper, hey, by the way, this deal is already funded at, 10% interest with one point down, something to that effect, to where I'm getting that referral fee or I'm getting that affiliate fee. Same thing goes for insurance. Same thing goes for title. Now, title company is not going to pay me any money. I know that, but favors for favors helps people out all along. So I don't know, again, it's thinking about what the next step is going to be and what the next bolt-on is going to be for a lot of people, that the squirrels that have the shiny objects. But
well, also too, something you said that I wanted to maybe make you think about a little different was, I think you had said something to the effect of the VA was, I don't think you said it was a waste of time, but it was challenging for you in that regard. What I think the VA business did for you that you didn't have any experience was teaching you how to, you're really good at speaking to people, so you obviously know how to do that, but you've never read a script. You've never actually had to reach out to a seller. You've never had to talk to people and convince them to sell their place. So in effect, the way that you were training those VAs was giving you experience in the wholesale business. And so I think it's really sort of heightened your wholesale business, aside from, the leveraging the ability of the VA. But when you start teaching somebody something, that becomes ingrained in your head, and so now you're training somebody on how to reach out to a seller. What are these points of contact? What does that look like? And I was involved in that process with you in the beginning. I remember there was a lot of correcting you were doing. No, don't say it this way. And to your point, you really elevated those VA people to the top of their class. So that to me was a tremendous amount of experience for you, especially getting you outside of your comfort zone with door knocking and getting out there and talking to people that don't have a huge need to sell their house, but trying to figure out what those needs are. And so I would encourage you maybe to look at it like that, is the VA business really elevated your wholesale business, just not from having a VA, but teaching a VA.
That's a great point. Thank you. All right. So as I said, I wanted to talk about your development side of the business. So let's go into that for a second. I can kind of already guess, and everybody probably already guesses, it probably started with fix and flips, right? So, give me that. When was the first fix and flip you did?
So I bought my first house in 2005, and I flipped my first house in 2006 with not OPM, but somebody else. So I wasn't using other people's money. I was actually using somebody else. I had no experience in flipping homes. So everybody, not everybody, but I was sort of in a circle of people that really were in that investing world. And so I got kind of piggybacked off of some people that had a lot of money. I had no money. I was really young, so I had no capital to really invest. And it was a different world. People didn't necessarily want to throw money at somebody that didn't have experience. Now you can kind of go out and get money because real estate investing has become much more commonplace. At that point in time, it wasn't. It was very niche. It was kind of obscure. And so getting people to invest in a young entrepreneur that didn't didn't really have the experience minus being in real estate was challenging. So that's what I did. I kind of had some partners initially that were, I convinced them to do some flipping. I was like, you guys bring the money, I can find the deals. And I know I can navigate this construction piece. And so that's when I started flipping houses in 2006. And then from that point forward, I kind of went out on my own once I had enough capital to go out on my own and start flipping my own places. I did do private money in the beginning, but I will tell you, hard money is the hardest money. So you really want to know what you're doing before you start getting hard money, because they don't have hard money for no reason. Right. Some of those deals, I didn't make any money. The only people that made money were the private money lenders. And so learning how to navigate that. At the same time, I was simultaneously running my painting company. And so I was involved with a lot of builders. I was seeing a lot of building going down. I was wrapping my head around that concept. And it was probably about 2014, 2015. HGTV is at its all-time high. Everybody's watching real estate investing shows. Everybody's becoming a real estate investor. I was going to auctions. I've been going to auctions since 2005, 2006, buying homes at auctions. I started seeing the dynamic of the auctions changing. I started seeing people come in that I had never seen before. Blatantly, they were just paying way too much for properties. So bidding properties up beyond what they were worth. So a lot of that water was becoming super saturated. And so by that point in time, I had my painting company for, 7 years, 8 years, been doing all this real estate fix and flips. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try and leverage my skills and go into a smaller pond. That's when I started building. The reason why I brought up that I worked with a lot of GCs, I'd seen a lot of really good GCs and I'd seen a lot of really bad GCs. And so there's a lot of these days what I call paper generals. So they're just virtual generals. They don't really stop by jobs. Everything's over the phone. They're not really managing their subs. And there were maybe 4 or 5 that I had worked with at the job every day, showing up, making sure their subs were doing stuff. So I had partnered with a guy that I had worked with my painting company. He had been a GC. And so I said, listen, I want to do this. I have the capital. Will you help me? And so I paid him essentially a consulting fee to help me build my first spec home. And then I just really learned that process from there. So that was 2015. I did my first spec.
Do you want me asking what a consultation fee?
He gives me still and gave me a really good deal. I would say most GCs these days probably charge upwards of $50K. I think my first one with him was maybe like 30,000 or something, so it's a good business for him. He makes 30K, and he's just sort of, I don't think he realized how involved I was going to be. I thought he was maybe the under impression he was going to be doing a lot more than what he did.
Right.
But I'm super hands-on. So I was very involved by design. I really like, I guess no pun intended, the design. So I like the design process. So, figuring out what colors are going to work together, tile, granite, floors, all that kind of stuff I was really good at because I had been running this painting company for years and I had this real estate business for years and I've been doing flips. So I knew what people liked. And so super involved. And so since then we've done a couple deals together. I bring him in, even still now I bring him in on some deals because it's nice to have, in that regard, I'm very much a solopreneur, but in that regard, it's nice to have somebody help you juggle all the balls, especially when it comes to developing because there's so many moving pieces. And then when you get to developing and building, now you have exponential moving pieces. So having somebody that can sort of, I don't want to say pick up the pieces, but make sure you're keeping everything juggling at the same time. And then I did my first development in 2000. I bought my first development parcel in 2019. It was a 2-acre parcel of property that had an existing house on it, and I was able to subdivide that out.
Was this the cat house?
It was the cat house, yeah. Okay. One of the cat houses at least.
Yeah. And the cat house, by the way, guys, was we found a bunch of kittens that were just chilling there.
Feral kittens. There was a ton of cats on this property, around the property, because it was almost like a farm.
Yeah.
So tons of animals. And so that was a 2-acre parcel that had an existing house. I subdivided that into 4 parcels. I kept the existing house. I still have that house. I rent that out for around $3,000 a month. And then I was able to subdivide out the other lots. I sold off 2 of the lots. I kept one of the lots, and I'm actually getting ready to do a spec build on one of those lots now. So that was my first sort of play into development. And then since then, I've done several development deals. My biggest one now being the one I'm working on, which is the 6-unit twin home project.
Looking back at that, the cat house, would you have sold the lots or would you have kept the lots and built?
Well, I kept one. So I did keep one of the lots. In a perfect world, sure, I would love to have kept them all, but I needed to recoup some of that money. It was a really big capital investment for me at that time. So I needed to figure out a way to recoup some of that. Fortunately, I was really chasing an upward market. Okay. So I think when I had started out on that project, my goal was to sell those lots for somewhere around $300, maybe even $250 if I remember correctly. And then by the time the project had finished, because this was 2019 to 2020, 2021 maybe, I ended up selling those lots for about $450 a piece. Cool. So, the cost of development ended up being a lot more.
And what did you pick it up at?
I bought that property. So it was kind of a weird deal. I bought the property as 2 separate parcels. The property that came with the house, even though it was part of the 2 acres, and then the remaining land, if you will. So I bought the land for $400, and I bought the parcel of property with half acre attached to it for $300. So I was all into that about $750. Okay. And then I sold 2 lots for $450. So obviously that paid everything off. I kept the existing house, which I rent, like I said, now for about $2,900, $3,000 a month. And then I have the 1 lot over that I didn't sell, thank goodness. I'm going to do a spec build on that. Probably will end up going out at around 1.5.
So, let's just break this down. Like from the amount you spent, would you you say that minus the house that was on the land, would you say that each half acre was worth about, or you bought it for about 130,000?
I think it was like 150, if I remember correctly.
So 150 after closing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you sold 2 of them for 450 each. So you made back all your money. You kept the house on it. Did you burr the house? Did you? I know you fixed it up.
I did. Yeah, remodeled it, and then so now I turned it into a rental.
Okay. Did you refinance?
I haven't refinanced
out?
it though. No, I did. I did pull out some cash on it, but not as much. I think I pulled maybe the house alone. I appraised for about 700, and I think I pulled out maybe like 4.
Okay.
Just to help kind of pay back some of the capital that I pulled out, and then so I got a ton of equity in that house now, and it's a great rental. I mean,
the 2 lots that you've sold, have they been built on yet?
One of them has. I was actually just over the other day in another side story. One of the buyers that bought that lot from me, I don't know if he got into financial trouble or something. I think because rates had jumped up, he was having a hard time getting the loan. So I should have bought it. I should have bought it back. But he liquidated that parcel with a foundation for less than what he had bought it from me for. I think he sold it for like $415 cash or something. I wish I had known he was going to go that low. I maybe would have bought it back. But so since then, that wasn't even that long ago. They've grown this house up. This thing it's a monster house that they put on this property. So maybe when I'm over there, I'll take some pictures, and when I'm back next time, we can throw it on. But so that one is in the process of being framed and built. The second lot doesn't look like it's had any activity. And then obviously the third lot that I own, I haven't started on. I have plans going through the city right now. I'm just sort of waiting to finish up this multi-unit project before I jump into that one.
So now let's jump into the multifamily project. Was 4 duplex townhomes?
So the multi-unit project was 1 single family home. It was 0.64 acres. So the lot was 0.64 acres. It was about a little under 3/4 of an acre. What was unique about this property was a single family home, but in each city, every city has different zoning. And so in the city this is in, it's called Midvale. This area of Midvale, what's called the duplex overlay zone. So the city had gone through and rezoned this area for whatever reason, point in time, sort of promoting high density. They had changed the zoning in this area to duplex overlay zone, which means you're allowed to build duplexes on this property. And so with the size of that property, I was able to fit 3 duplex buildings, which we call twin homes in this case. 3 duplex buildings, which had 2 units apiece, and so 6 total units. So 1 single family home rezoned to duplex overlay, and then we kind of went through the design process of building 6 twin homes. So that's where I'm at, wrapping up that project here now, actually.
And I mean, it's an absolutely gorgeous project.
Thank you.
Now I know you like the design. I know you got your GC license. Do you also have to hire architects to do all the plans and stuff?
Yeah, because you want to make sure that everything, you could potentially make your own plans to the city, but I'm not an architect. So there's a lot of red lines that go into a piece of architecture planning. So the architect will put together a plan, you submit that to the city, and that has to go through engineering too. So you have to hire an engineer to then stamp the plans. You submit that to the city, then the city comes back to you and says, all these things will work except for X, 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 X. And then you need to go back to the architect. They need to redraw those things. So it's kind of a back and forth game. I couldn't even imagine taking that on without an architect.
I almost forgot to ask you this. I want you to tell me the story about the retaining wall.
The retaining wall at
up against
Riverton?
the creeks?
Yeah. So you're always sort of learning things. That's one of the things that I love about this is you're always learning new things, experience and knowledge from these projects. So in this case, back to the property in Riverton, which is where that 2-acre parcel was that I subdivided into 4 lots with the existing house being one of them. It bordered a canal. So because it bordered a canal, the city in this case was very particular about the kind of wall that you put up against this. I guess a couple years ago, a kid sadly broke through a fence or gotten through an opening in a fence and he had drowned in the canal. And so they've gone back to the city and said, hey, we want these super beefy walls anytime a property is touching the canal. What I had a problem with is it's private property. So if you want to put that type of beefy wall in a public area, a park that borders a canal, anything that's public, I don't have any problem with that. But when you start dictating sort of what's required to go into a private piece of property, that becomes a challenge. And so I pushed back a little, actually. They wanted me to put in a wall, and this was a huge property. So it was a 300-foot long plus wall. They wanted me to put in a solid concrete wall.
Right.
And I don't know if anybody knows how expensive that is, but putting in these solid concrete walls would have been probably $100,000 to put this fence in, essentially. And so I had gone to the city and said, listen, let me put in a faux concrete wall. And you probably see these a lot in subdivisions. You'll see them. They look like they're concrete, but the walls are actually hollowed out. They're more hollow. Yeah. The columns are concrete, but the actual panels are not. And so they wouldn't allow it. They were like, we can't do that. And so I went the rounds with them, going back and forth, and I ended up going before the city council, and I got them to change the law in that city that said, listen, on private property, you should be allowed to put these walls in because it's the responsibility of the homeowner to make sure there's no degradation of that wall that people could potentially get through and get hurt. And so they granted it. And actually I was able to put in called Rhino Rock, I believe it is. Rhino Rock, I believe is the name. And so I was able to get that that wall put in, and I think it ended up only costing me about 25 grand compared to potentially like 100,000. So it was a substantial savings, and truthfully, it looks aesthetically way better. So it was a better wall to put in. They're super durable. It's, when I say they're hollow, it's not like they're flimsy. I mean, they're solid walls. They just look like they're concrete and they're not concrete. So that was one of the things that I'd never sort of battled the city like that before, pushed back. And so it was kind of rewarding in the sense to be like, listen, I can push back and I can kind of, dictate a little bit, for lack of a better way to describe it, how this goes down. And in that case, I was able to get them to turn it over. And I think they actually changed the rule for the whole city. I don't think it was just my project. I think they ended up changing the rule for the whole city. Yeah, so it was a good experience.
So, all right, kind of wrap this up. We're at the hour mark right now.
Time flies when you're having fun.
I know. The one question that I want to have for you is, now that you're getting into more, land development and just builds in general, there's a lot of wholesalers out there that always talk to me about land. Mm-hmm. Land. How do you value land? What would you pay for land? All that kind of stuff. Let me just ask you that. What do you look for when you are buying land? How do you value it so that you know that you're going to build on it, you're going to make your money on it? Like, what do you look for?
The number one thing I think you need to look for when you're looking at land is zoning. So you want to know what the property you're buying is zoned to do, or what you are buying the property potentially could be zoned to do. And that is what really gives it the value. I paid a lot of money for that property in Midvale. I paid about $750,000 for that property, and it was only 0.64 acres. Mm-hmm. But the reason why I paid that much is because it was zoned duplex overlay. So I knew that I could build multi-unit. And so the biggest thing I would say to any wholesaler or anybody that's looking at land is figuring out what you can put on that piece of property, because that's where the true value comes from. For example, you can go downtown and get a 0.11, which is half a quarter acre lot, for $1 million because maybe it's zoned R135. So you can put 35 units potentially on this little parcel of property. Naturally, as you get closer to any downtown, those parcels become a lot smaller and you can do more with them. But that's where the value comes in. And there's a couple people that might even be watching this podcast that I've bought some stuff from or dealt with that have brought me land deals that they understand that. They know what that value is. And in some cases, they're even the ones that go through and get the zoning sort of changed and then rezone it. Well, now you can capture that gap of value because you were the one that went through the process of rezoning it to make it a little bit more valuable. So I'd say zoning is always number one. And then kind of looking out for little weird things. Is it a weird lot? I don't like flag lots, for example. I don't know if people know what flag lots are, but flag lot is a piece of land that essentially sits behind another property. And so you have common easement that allows you to get back to that property. Very common, but they just don't tend to have as much value. So anytime I'm looking at a property, I'm looking at what it can be done with it and what is it now and what can I do with it. So I would say zoning is probably the number one.
And where are you buying these the land from? Are you getting land wholesalers coming at you, brokers?
A lot of times, truthfully, just MLS. So I'll find some on the MLS. The property that I bought in Midvale, I just got lucky because I happened to have this is where relationships are very important. I had a relationship with the broker that was selling that property, and he was getting hit up by big time builders, Ivory Home, several other big builders in the city. But he didn't really want it to go to a big builder, and we had a really good relationship, so he ended up selling it to me. And so that was an MLS deal. The one in Riverton was an off-market deal. They had sort of gotten, right as the pandemic was hitting, they had kind of gotten into some financial trouble and they needed to liquidate.
Right.
So I bought that property off market. I just bought another property last week off market. I like off market. So anytime I can find off market stuff, that's the scenario, but I'm not afraid to hit the MLS either.
Got it. And that last piece of land that I think you bought, that was off market?
It was off market, yeah. Just closed on that one last week.
And what'd you pick that up for?
300.
And what's your plan?
Twin homes. So it's the same thing. It's like right around the corner from the one I'm doing. It's a duplex overlay. So this one I'll only be building one twin home, which is 2 units. I would say, kind of back to your previous point, one of the biggest challenges I've had with this multi-unit, I've always done single family. So it's not super easy, but it's much easier to design one home versus designing 6. And so when you get into multi-unit, now you're really pushing the limits of your design capability because you don't want everything to look the same. At least I don't. I don't like cookie cutter stuff. So I was trying to be a little bit diligent in my uniqueness of my design for these properties. So now, if I don't have to look at another granite yard for the next 3 years, I'll be okay, because it's like you're just constantly going places to pick out tile, pick out floor, pick out carpet, pick out paint. And so when you extrapolate that out to multiple properties, it's much more challenging than just doing one. So that was a good experience too.
Love it, man.
Yeah.
So you got it for 300. You're going to be building the twin home on it. What's your ultimate goal? What do you hope to build? What are you going to put into it? And what do you think you can sell for?
So I learned a lot on this last one too, because I had not done multi-unit before. I'd only done single family. I usually look for single family infill lots. And so in this case, multi-unit was new. It was pretty expensive. So my plan is to build a smaller place. So it'll be smaller. It won't be quite as modern, even though I really like modern architecture. It'll still be modern, but not over the top. My plan is probably bought that for 300. If I could be into the total build, maybe another 7, hopefully even closer to 6, but let's say 7. So I'll be into that thing around $1 million. And then if I could sell each of those twin homes for around 6, it'll be 1.2. So it's okay. It's not the greatest return, but it's not bad. It gives me something to keep demonstrating what I'm capable of doing and truthfully create good content out of it and show the masses what's out there.
The last build you did, I know that because the market shifted started, you were hoping to sell it a lot faster. And I mean, like right when you were finishing up the project was when market dropped, right?
The Midvale one? Yeah, so that was a tremendous learning experience all the way through, because as I started building that was pandemic, and material costs, labor costs are just skyrocketing. Interest rates started skyrocketing, you know, and obviously I didn't do this all with my own money, so I do have other people's money in this project, and so those rates skyrocketed. So yeah, between that whole process, I've just been chasing, trying to keep the cost down as much as possible, but also chasing an increasing market with cost. So, you know, it didn't tank necessarily, but definitely slowed down. And as you know, the market that we're in now is a weird market. It's really hot in some cases and really not in some cases.
Right.
And so I think it just depends on what the buyer wants and what they're looking for. These are a super unique product, and the price point on them is pretty high because they're luxury. So I think it's going to take the right kind of buyer. But I just did an open house there this weekend and had a lot of interest. So now it's coming down to, you know, the sales and marketing piece.
Yeah.
So because I do it all, the build is one piece. And then now once that's done, that chapter's closed, put on my sales and marketing cap.
Have you staged it?
I haven't staged it yet. I was debating on staging it. You know, it's going to cost me probably $4 or $5 grand. So
right.
It's more capital expenditure than I'm like, I'm not totally sure it's worth it. But if it comes down to it, I will for sure. So that's next potentially up. I'm hoping to get an offer on a few of them in the next couple of days, but we'll see what happens. So, you know, just to touch on something that you had mentioned earlier, which was the sales and marketing piece. I always say this to my people that work for me, particularly in the painting company. We're not a painting company. We're a sales and marketing company that sells paint. And so I look at every business like that. I'm a sales and marketing company that sells whatever I do. And so that's how I think when you can replace the widget and you learn how to advertise, market, get sales, get leads, it makes it so much easier to just keep replicating that process. So I didn't get a chance to touch back on that, but I wanted to.
Love it, man. All right, well, I think that wraps up the hour and 7-minute podcast, and I love it.
We didn't get to talk to you though. Let's talk about you a little bit.
No, I don't want to talk about
You don't want to talk about me? All right,
I don't want to talk about me. No, this was the podcast for you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me on too. I'd love to do this again. I truthfully need to get better about doing more of these in general. Like I said, I'm an extroverted introvert, so getting out there and kind of doing them is a challenge for me, but maybe pop my cherry, if you will.
Love it. All right, brother. Guys, this has been Brandon Oquendo out here in Salt Lake. Brandon, what's your social media?
Instagram is The Real Oquendo, RealOquendo. That's the most important one, so just follow me on the gram, and then you can get my other stuff from there.
Cool. By the way, are you on Threads yet?
I am on Threads. I was one of the first, actually. Cool. We'll see if we use it. I haven't been a huge Twitter user, so it's another platform that I would like to get engaged with and potentially, you know, get more eyes on what I'm doing. So I'll be more involved in Threads than I ever have been on Twitter. So.
Good. I'll see you there.
And hopefully we can watch Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg battle it out in the Coliseum.
Yeah, that'd be good. All right, so guys, this is Brandon Oquendo, The Real Oquendo on Instagram. I'm Jeremy Davis. You can find me at The Jeremy Davis on Instagram and on YouTube. And yeah, thanks for listening to the podcast, and we will see you guys in the next one.